Hi, welcome to the Second Rainbow Coalition Reading Group. We are reading Voices of the Revolution by Johnny Torres, and today we will be kicking things off with the Statement of Unity. Comrade Gabby, you have the floor.
Thank you, Sister Zan. I'll begin reading the Statement of Unity. Let me just share my screen. Yes. Sorry. Wait, what is it? Oh, there it is. Oh, okay, there we go. I got confused there for a second. Sorry about that. Anyways, let me start up my thing again. Can y'all see this? Oops, sorry.
We could.
Can y'all see this? Can y'all see this?
Will you kick it sideways?
All
there
right.
you go. Awesome. Thank you, comrade.
Right on. Let me just see if I can. No. All right, I'll begin reading the Statement of Unity preface. The U.S. was founded as a colonial settler state based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the land of the indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and confining them to quote-unquote reservations, concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, the ego sunk its claws to other nations, making war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and the Philippines, and either annexing them outright or making them colonies or neo-colonies. And in the 20th century, it became the major imperialist power in the world, exploiting both the people within its boundaries and those in every other country, bullying them with military interventions, and robbing them of their right of self-determination. As European Union stated, quote, "We have two enemies to fight, racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary. Racism is a byproduct of capitalism. The working people of the world, of every ethnicity or nationality, face a common enemy that is destroying life on Earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling most of the world's wealth and resources. We must have the power to see, we must have our basic needs met to live a good and meaningful life: food, shelter, healthcare, education, freedom from the oppression by the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see to it that the abundance that is available is shared equitably." Statement of Unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th, 1969, by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and Young Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined this coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, Brown Berets, Rising Up Angry, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses have developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against this capitalist imperialist system in various ways or on particular demands. Nevertheless, none have established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement was the first of its kind to establish a model class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther Party, stated that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a quote-unquote race struggle. He said that's a class struggle, God damn it. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class condition. Therefore, the necessity to form a united front against their common class oppressor, the capitalist, imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule, and subsequently used the entire oppressive forces of the state, police, courts, jails, prisons, intelligence agencies, etc., in order to crush this emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14th, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is a model for the united front that will best serve our class liberation. By upholding the templating program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriots Young Patriots organization, and all other original Rainbow Coalition members reestablish our pragmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all organizations in our coalition to a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class measure to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist and peerless ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and class interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the necessary class solidarity, class consciousness, organizational structures, and a united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is committed to. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All members of the coalition, New African Black Panther Party, Black Panther Party, Green Party of New Jersey, Her People's Army, La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, NASO, North Alabama School for Organizers, New Era Young Lords, and American Indian Movement Northeast Woodland Chapter. The 6 disciplinary rules. Number 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. Number 2, members will be sober while on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activity while a member. Number 3, no member will engage in violence except in the extremity of self-defense. Number 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. Number 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. And number 6, nobody is for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so. And that is the statement of unity.
Thank you, comrade.
All power, all of them power.
All power. All right. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So half the page here. All right, we're kicking today off with the bio of Hitachi Aziz. Who would like to take a turn reading first?
I'll read.
Thanks.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Gary.
Sorry, what?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that I wanted to read first because I have enough time, and then I think I'm got to go. So I just wanted to read this one once before I have to go, and that's okay with y'all.
Right on. And then Rafa, you can go next.
Right on.
All
Bio. Hitachi Aziz. I believe that's how I pronounce it. Hitachi Aziz is a trauma abolitionist and a holistic healer who has a master's degree in counseling and psychology from the Union Institute and University. She is the owner of Peacemaker Enterprise and founder of the Greenway Meditation Institute for Prison Reentry. Hitachi is a racial recovery facilitator, a Reiki master. I don't know what that means.
Energy
healing touch practitioner. Okay. Healing touch practitioner, registered massage therapist, coach, spoken word poet, writer, radio producer, labyrinth, and meditation facilitator of sacred spaces. She has been a veteran social justice activist since 1965. Damn. I don't know if pronouncing her first name. I don't know if I should be pronouncing it with the H or not, but I'm just gonna keep on saying how I've been pronouncing it. Hitachi is a trauma survivor in recovery and a keeper of sacred grandmother wisdom. She sounds awesome.
Comrade Johnny, can you tell us a little bit about her?
Yes, of course. I only knew a little bit of her. My mentor, he's the one who got her in the anthology book, but I did meet her, and she's a very wise person. She's full of wisdom, and she has like this power in her voice, and it really does strike you because you know wherever she writes or what she says is the truth because there was a lot of trauma in her past that she has overcome, and I think we all kind of had some trauma in our lives where we like for past it or we overcome it, and she definitely described that in her poetry. And I got to read, well, I didn't get to read, but I was in a poetry reading once, and she read some of her poems, and they really struck me, and it really took me back to my childhood. So that's where the healing of her poetry sets in.
That's beautiful.
Thank you,
Yes.
Comrade.
Is she still alive?
Yes, she is.
That's
Very
good.
much
That's
so.
good. I love to hear that.
Yeah, she's writing her own book now.
Really? What's it about? I'm guessing it's about
Uh,
healing.
Healing and trauma. I guess what we're about to read right now, it's I
Right
guess you're
on.
gonna get because she wrote 2 poems for the book, two
Oh.
stories actually.
Right on. I'll read the first poem, and after that, I'm going to have to dip, unfortunately. But I hope you all have a good reading after that.
You're good.
Okay.
All right, let's see the poem. My Father's Silence, a personal account of trauma and its origins. Quote, this story is dedicated to the spirit of my father, Jack Kirkland, who was a steel mill worker in Pittsburgh. My father's silence reflects the epigenetics.
Epigenetics.
I don't know what that means. The epigenetics of my particular family and the humanity of all families. H. Assis. Family constellation therapist Mark Woolen once said, quote, just as we inherit our eye color and blood type, we also inherit the residue from traumatic events that have taken place in our family. Illness, depression, anxiety, unhappy relationships, and financial challenges can all be forms of this unconscious inheritance. The same analysis can be utilized in reference to the history of chattel slavery, trauma, and systemic racism in America. Yep, generational trauma right here. It was an inhumane system whose historical attributes can still be found in the American prison systems of today, because that's what it is. The American prison system is just slavery transformed into a new form. This history has left hurtful and paralyzing residues of trauma passed on from one generation to the next within African American communities. There has been long-term collateral damage and an ongoing psychic wound which deserves to be healed with radical self-care. And by providing the emotional resources for the personal as well as the collective well-being of African American communities or New African communities. Mark Woolen teaches that, quote, traumatic memories are transmitted through chemical changes in DNA, unquote. There is a need to understand the conscious and unconscious inheritance of terror and systemic racism long term. I grew up right outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a town called McKees Rock in the 1950s. McKees Rocks was a large Italian community with smaller pockets of old world European immigrants. It also held Roma people Jews, one Chinese family, and even smaller pockets of New African people that had migrated from the South and its terrors. I was born out of one of those New African families that migrated from the same place where they were owned. Their plantation was based in Evergreen, Alabama. The journey was headed by my great grandmother, Sally, and her husband, William Liddell, who died just before they reached Pittsburgh in the late 1920s. They were a part of the great migration of formerly enslaved people and new African people looking for more freedom and less terror. They were running hard for their lives, leaving all their possessions except what they could pack and what they wore on their backs. My father's family got there on the same emotional journey, migrating from Alabama, running for a dream called Pittsburgh. My father, Jack Kirkland, was one of the first new African men to be hired in a steel mill near our government-owned low-income housing in those days. We called them the quote-unquote projects, and it was the first time that we had an indoor toilet. We lived by the sounds of the steel mills. The sirens of the steel mills were always in the background of our lives. We always knew when the work shift started and when it ended. Being employed in a steel mill was an important event for a new African man in those days of the 50s and 60s. My dad was a chronic alcoholic and wounded so deeply that he had lost all of his social compassions by the time I was born in 1953. He rarely ever smiled, and when he did, he was usually drunk. If he did smile, it was a smile of shame, rage, terror, pain, and he would never be able to understand the complexity of trauma and depression that co-created his pain and his living. Today, he would be classified as depressed, but no one talked about trauma and depression in those days. And no one talked about a man being deeply sad, especially a new African man. He was naturally traumatized just by growing up in Alabama in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, where lynching and terrorist attacks were as common as the air he breathed. Every working day, right after he clocked out, you could see him rigidly walking with lunch bucket in hand to his mother's house to start the daily after work drinking binge that would last for hours. His mother, Grandma Vassie, ran a speakeasy, quote unquote, out of her apartment to make ends meet, which was a common activity in our community. He was a man who was bonded to a suffering and chronic depression, sexually addicted, and a classic workaholic. One day, he accidentally cut his finger off at the mill, and his boss had to force him to leave. Terrified that he would not be able to return, my father was convinced that he could still work with the loss of his finger and needed no medical attention. He was known to be a hard-working man, always on time and never late for work, yet always late in being a father. One payday, my mother sent me to Grandma Vassie's, my grandma Vassie's, my grandmother Vassie's house to ask him for money. The $18 taken out of his check was never enough to make ends meet on her disability check she received for having a stroke. My dad always had money for drinking, gambling, women, and nothing for a daughter in need. I remember sitting there for hours in a room filled with drunken New African men, silently watching dollar bills fall out of his pockets. There were no words or, sorry, what?
You skipped a line.
Oh, sorry, I did.
Silently.
Sadly overwhelmed, waiting for him to just notice that I was there while watching dollar bills fall out of his pockets. There were no words for quote unquote children of alcoholics back in those days. My dad lived by a different definition of manhood than a general white population of poor white men. Poor white men. Both groups have been historically silent about depression. he had to carry an extra layer of shame by being the grandson of enslaved people. He was not popular. He was not popular to be it was not popular to be a New York man, and it was never safe. You could be killed at any time for any reason. Like I said, he grew up poor in Alabama, and impending death or the possibility of dying based on race was a norm for New African men. I understand now why my dad was so messed up. He was profoundly disappointed with life. He was always afraid and brokenhearted. His medication was alcohol, work, women, and anything he could do to take the edge off the rage and terror that walked with him every day. I suspect he was an incest survivor. I suspect he was an incest survivor. He acted out sexually. His entire world reflected this terror, and you could see the same terror in the eyes of his drinking buddies. My father was one of my first sexual predators, along with several of his drinking buddies. Jesus fuck. Sexual abuse within my family is another story to be told. It was not unusual for them to ask or act like I was his quote unquote woman, instead of a young girl in elementary school who looked just like her dad. I was called quote unquote little Jack. He could even pee in front on me on the side of the street. When shopping for school clothes, he would not hesitate to steal in front of me. One time I even saw him be arrested for stealing. Another time, when he tried to steal a necklace in a store, I started to cry and asked him if Jesus would do that. And he stopped, although he was pissed off. On top of all of this, I would usually end up holding his hand to cross both of us across the street because of his drunkenness. I was my dad's little mother, parent, child, and a sexual object. Fucking hell, that's horrible. Jesus. His sadness usually took on the faces of rage, violence, resentment, and coldness. Mostly coldness and attachment. Sometime when he was growing up, he accepted the message that said that men in general are not considered real men if they showed their true feelings and allowed themselves to become vulnerable. Again, that toxic masculine fucking bullshit. That if you're a man, you're inherently emotionless. That you're inherently this and you're inherently that. Misogyny tells men this. It's fucking disgusting. Somewhere in some place, shame had taught him. Sorry, what?
Sorry, I was just thinking, being vulnerable is a strength, regardless of your gender.
Exactly. It's not only just strength; it's being human. Human beings we're vulnerable people because we're social and emotional people. We're social and emotional creatures. To not be vulnerable is to not accept a part of what makes you human, and that's what capitalism does. It literally rejects humanity. It literally rejects us for being human, and said it wants us to be cold-hearted, emotionless machines that follow orders, that do whatever needs to be done, and then once we're no longer exploitable and useful, we're discarded as if we were nothing.
It disregards the part of being a human and a fully realized autonomous being is to experience the entirety of the emotional spectrum. All of it.
Exactly. Human beings in general, both men and women, have the capacity of sharing the exact same emotions on every level, from the tamest to the boldest. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, reading this. Sorry, what?
Oh, I was just going to highlight right there where we left off, so we didn't lose your spot.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, where was it? There we go.
Right
Thank
here.
you. somewhere and someplace, shame had taught him as a little new African boy that it was too dangerous to be real and human. My father grew up with a mixed and confusing message. The historical message that wait, I'm confused. Oh, there we go. The historical message was that my dad was a descendant of people who were considered only 3/5 human in the early development of this country. So how could he ever be a good enough man? There was an energetic ceiling placed on his humanity. The other part was that as a man, you were not shown how to own your own devastation as a human, other than acting out in destructive ways. The another part was about their sexism, and that women were often objectified as a form of education. I really this right here is what we also went over in in the Young Lords of Radical History, where where Joanna writes that that colonized men that colonized men are always being demonized and looked down on, and their manhood under a settler colonial white supremacist society and system is always being questioned, and it's always being damaged. So instead of taking their rage on the people who do it, they take it out on their children and their wives due to that misogynistic patriarchal system. Both racism and misogyny playing a role in that. So yeah,
Vicious cycle. That's
Mhm.
you know why bell hooks deemed this system capitalist, misogynist patriarchy, because there's no separating any of those facets from any of the others. They all go together.
Nope, they're all interconnected. You cannot separate the secondary from the primary, because the secondary derives from the primary, but the primary can be found within the secondary.
Mhm.
The misogynistic patriarchal system isn't just there just because they come out of nowhere. It's economic, it's social, and it's upheld by the capitalist mode of production and socioeconomic system. It's rooted within it. First came profit, then came misogyny and patriarchy. And even though misogyny and patriarchy predate, exactly, and even though misogyny and even though patriarchy and misogyny predate capitalism, capitalism upholds it, and it makes it a global phenomenon never seen before with any other socioeconomic system. It makes it a global thing.
Right. And especially in regards, because this is my people that we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine being stripped from your family, on your homeland, on a ship, and brought to a whole nother place to replace the labor of another native people, to be stripped of your culture, to be stripped of thousands of years of history snatched away from you, to be considered subhuman, an animal, a savage, to be experimented on every single day, to be working in the fields every single day, to be used by your human trafficker to breed 200 children. 200 slave children, because that's exactly what actually happened in modern day Brazil, where most of us on this continent overall are. Okay? Imagine that for over 400 years now, because it's still happening. Imagine being separated by class lines from the fields from the house, the darks from the lights. Imagine that being part of the experience. This was the norm. This is what colonialism caused. This is what chattel enslavement caused. This is what the prison enslavement, the prison system, the prison enslavement essentially caused. The colorism, the sexual violence, the destructive masculinity. That was the norm. And it still is to this day. African children are still being victims of incest, of sexual violence, of misogyny, racism, to be faced with terrorism every single day, not knowing who the hell you are. Because that was exactly what was going on in the Deep South, because most of us were down there to be stripped of your ancestral identity and see your own people be lynched in cold blood, in broad daylight, and have these Europeans have picnics while your body burns around them, while you're hanging from a poplar tree. That was every single day. Every single day, the moment we came on here, on this continent, that was the norm. And it still is to this day. African children are still in a ma'afa. We are still in our Holocaust. This is part of the Holocaust that we have. We have a Holocaust of our own. And it's been going on for 404 years now, because 404 makes it back in August. 404 years of experimentation, of breeding, of destructive gender, of sexual violence, being eaten alive by alligators. Every single thing happening to us.
Even
Every
the
single
lynchings
thing.
didn't stop.
Yeah,
Look, in the last couple of years, there's been kids found hung from trees, and the
never-
official story being put out is like, oh, they must have committed suicide. No,
no,
no.
not commit suicide, because if they did, they would not do it in front of everyone. Okay? That is a lie, because it's still happening to us. And we want to pretend that we made so much freaking progress when we have done jack shit. Because we're still being lynched, we're still facing sexual violence, we're still facing misogyny, we're still facing destructive bourgeois construct of gender. We are sick that way. Because that is still happening. That is what colonialism created here and back home. Back home. I mean, you have promotion of skin bleaching creams for darker skinned people to become white. To become white. To brush off the black off them. That was the norm back then. And no one could even do a damn thing about it, because they've been so freaking brainwashed with all this bullshit that they don't know what the hell's going on. And they still don't. We still don't. So imagine that for 404 years, to be stripped of your identity and to be in the brunt of this every single day, in the fields, in the plantations, in the death camps, in the concentration camps, in the schools, in our communities, to migrate out of a genocidal system that will kill you on sight, only to face the exact same thing. The redlining, the housing discrimination, because especially in Cabrini Green, it was a concentration camp. If you want to know the truth, they did not do a damn thing for those people. They did not do anything for the Africans in New York. They did not do anything for the Africans in Chicago, in Milwaukee, in Detroit, in Minneapolis, in Cleveland, And they certainly don't give a fuck about Africans across the South. They do not. This was the norm. And it still is the norm to this day. Every single day.
That's why it's important that she's detailing all of this here and describing in explicit detail the generational trauma, the damage that does. And that's what epigenetics is referring to. Epi means above or upon. So she's describing the things that are inherited over and above what you inherit genetically, just like as far as your phenotype of you're inheriting trauma, because going through trauma literally damages your DNA.
It does. It does. So you have years of child enslavement, then you have the prison system, then you have Jim Crow, the Black Codes, when we became so-called free, even though we're still slaves. Okay? We're still enslaved. It's just a different way today. Okay? Imagine those
They
years.
just expanded it.
All those years added. Our DNA, our identity being distorted to the point that it's in the bloodline. It's in the bloodline. And everyone is a victim of it. I don't care how much they lie about there being good times in the 40s and 50s. There was no good times. There were no good times because we were still being lynched. We were still being killed. I mean, did you not hear about Emmett? You did not read about Emmett Till? Did you not see the news growing up back then when you were growing up?
Right. This country was never great for everybody, therefore it's never been great.
That's why
it was never great.
That's why they lie about there being good times in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, because they don't want to remember. They don't want to remember it.
Not to cut you short, we can all dive into more discussion on this once we finish reading this section, but I'm looking at the clock and Sister Gabby's only got a few more minutes, so I want to make sure we can, get through the rest of this section while she's still here. We've got a lot of reading to do today.
Oh, don't worry. Don't worry. Right on. Where did I leave off?
This paragraph right here, he internalized this message.
Gotcha. Also, I'm gonna make it quick, but I just wanted to add to what y'all were saying by saying that these forms of oppression and subjugation and exploitation, they never went away. They never left. They were just transformed into they just changed how they applied. They just became new forms. Instead of chattel slavery, you have the prison complex. Instead of segregation, you have redlining. Instead of a white mob coming to burn down a new African community and replace them, now you have gentrification. It's the same thing, but it's applied in a different way. These forms of oppression change and adapt to fit the materialistic conditions of today. They've become more sophisticated. Just like imperialism with neocolonialism, it's become more sophisticated. It never went away. They've just gotten better at hiding it, or supposedly making it seem like racism is just quote unquote gone. That never went away. It's still here.
Yeah.
Just want to add that.
Right on.
Right on. All right. So he internalized this message as part of his core self. My father was not raised to see life with passion and dreams to be pursued. His life was more about survival, and his future held no real meaning. He lived never knowing when his life would end based on the color of his skin. He would never be good enough, nor did he expect it. Along the road, he managed to internalize enough illusion and oppression that he believed the myth and messages of the shame. He was what he thought he was, and he manifested those thoughts every day. This right here, that's internal racism, right here. Yeah. That's the internal racism.
Yeah.
What's that saying? If you get told, if everyone tells you that you're a monster, you start believing it yourself, or something along those lines. Yeah. This right here, if you're exposed to misogynistic, racist, white supremacist, and bigoted and derogatory stereotypes of what your people are, and you keep on being exposed to it, eventually you internalize that shit and you start believing it yourself, subconsciously or consciously.
You're psychologically depleted, essentially.
Exactly. You're psychologically colonized. You psychologically think all of that shit. You psychologically think that you and African people are quote unquote lazy, that you and African people are quote unquote inherently aggressive, that you and African people are had no history, and that y'all are nothing and you were nothing but slaves and quote unquote savages. You start believing that shit when you're exposed to these systems, when you're exposed to these institutions that uphold the racial hierarchy and white supremacy, when you're exposed to these concentration camps that we call schools that teach us this white supremacist bullshit, this whitewashed bullshit that colonized people never had history, that there was nothing here until the settlers came, that we owe everything to the settlers. That's what they teach you. That's what they want you to know. They don't want colonized people to actually understand that they had a history. They don't want them to know why things are the way they are. They don't want them having that breakthrough and having that scientific and dialectical analysis of their communities. They don't want them to piece together that racism and capitalism are interlinked and intertwined. You can't have capitalism without having racism. It would fall apart at the seams. If capitalism no longer benefited from the racial hierarchy, they're interconnected, and that's what they don't want us to know. Sorry about that. Many of the men in my family were alcoholics, and they were depressed, violent, and deeply sad, like Dad. They took out this depression, sadness on their families. Yep. That toxic masculinity, taking out the anger of dealing with racism and your manhood being belittled on your wives and children. They were the first terrorists to which I was ever exposed to. When I was a little girl pretending to sleep, I would hear them only come to my grandmother Bessie, and it would cry in the wee hours of night about racism, the N-word, and they would share with her their fears and the most vulnerable parts of who they were, only to rise in the morning detached, cold, and smiling that kind of smile that only drunk men can do. Once again, they were men, and men have to stay strong by any means, because that's what quote unquote man is. Don't show your emotions. Don't be vulnerable. Don't be human. You're just a sexual beast. You can't control your impulses. You're nothing but a worker that has to sacrifice everything just to provide for your family that you barely ever see and then die. That's what they teach you. It all came together when I was a teenager that something was critically wrong with the men in my family and my family in general, when my cousin Jean was beaten to death by her husband James. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Death by beating was never attached to her death. And it was said she, quote unquote, just did not wake up that morning. Bullshit. We sat there in the church, a church where James was the deacon viewing Jean's body, and still no one could really name what had happened. We knew she had been beaten to death after many bloody beatings. We could never name my cousin James' depression and mental illness after 1,000 times of hearing him cry in the wee hours of the night, only to rise early in the morning, cold, detached, and smiling that smile those drunk men do. I sometimes wonder how it would be if we had known how to hear them with deeper attention. I wonder what it would have been like if they could have named their depression, their terror, their emotional pain, and their addictions. I wonder how things would have been if they had the opportunity to experience a kind and gentle compassion from a society that saw them as invisible and less than. I wonder how their lives would have turned out if they had known how to define their dreams and passions outside of addiction and violence. I wonder how it would have been if the women in my family would have been empowered not to co-sign to the insanity. I miss the father I never had. I miss having a safe father. I still fantasize how it would feel like to have a father to be proud of you. I forgive my father for the many days that I had to be his mother as a child. I forgive him for the sexual abuse. I forgive him for the sexual abuse. For I am too worthy to carry such a huge resentment. I forgive him for shaming me and never saying the word love. I forgive him for never hugging. I forgive him for never hugging me and for never making it safe to be his child. I forgive him for his coldness and the many days of embarrassments. I forgive him for that smile. I forgive myself for the many men I tried to make become my father. I forgive myself for being attracted to the many men who were just like my father. I forgive myself for the many years of depression and self-abuse, thinking and acting that I was less than human. In the legacy of my father and the people of my family, I promise with intent to remember that all little boys and girls are worthy of deep attention, respect, and kind compassion of their sacredness and divine spirits. This is fucking beautiful. This was really, really, really
Real.
it kind of it resonated with me somewhat because obviously my family has generational trauma with the fucking reactionary bourgeois thought that comes from our family, and obviously it does not amount to anything that has been described here. You know, but exactly as she said right here, I believe everyone is traumatized by colonialism and its system. Even colonized, even white people are traumatized and abused by the system. Even they have generational trauma to a different extent, but everyone has generational trauma under a capitalist imperialist system because we're treated like nothing. We're treated we're treated as if we are just cogs in a machine that can be replaced. And this kind of had me thinking, because it kind of reminded me of my family, you know, and the abuse and the trauma that they put on me. And there's still a lot of anger that I gotta deal with, and that I got to manage, and that I got to find, and I have to find more understanding of to get a more conceptual idea of stuff. But I sometimes wonder about what she was describing here. You know, like how would it feel like if my parents actually meant it when they said "I love you"? You know, I sometimes wonder about my parents saying, you know, how would it be like if they weren't such reactionary gusanos?
Yeah.
I wonder that.
Yeah. And that's
I saw you throw your hand up a couple of minutes ago. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Comrade Shay?
Yeah. If you never lived in an alcoholic family, then you don't know nothing about it. I lived in it. My mother was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my father, I never met him. Didn't never care about him either. He disowned me when I was 6 years old. 6 years old, he disowned me. He didn't want nothing to do with me. So I didn't care about him. And I still don't care about him today. You know, I know he ain't around no more. And I'm glad he's not. He deserves to be wherever the fuck he is at. That's how I feel about my father. Because my father never lived up to the word father. There's a lot of men that call themselves fathers. They're actually not fathers.
they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Only because they make children, they call themselves fathers. But they're not fathers. Fathers is not a person that. Excuse me?
You're saying, Shay?
Yeah.
No. Go on.
No, I just
Listen.
want, I could go on and on and on.
No.
Because
Go on,
I
Jay.
lived in that life. But it touched me because, I know what it feels like to have people in your family die as a result of abuse. I had an aunt that was killed by her husband under alcohol, and yet he never went to jail. I mean, not that I wanted him to go to jail, but he was never arrested. So alcohol is a hell of a is a hell of a disease. It's a disease that you got to really understand it. You really got to understand it. It's no joke. It affects you in all aspects of your life.
It really does.
One of those things people use to self-medicate to try to cope with trauma, cope with
Like this.
just
To run from
existing. I mean, when dealing with these levels of trauma, every day is existential crisis. And alcohol and drugs are what people use to numb themselves to those things.
from their trauma.
Yeah.
To run
Abuse
away.
themselves and others.
And going back to what I said earlier, that's why you have some people that say that they were only good times, especially in my community, because they don't want to remember the trauma. They don't want to remember what happened, what happened to their people, what happened to their families, what happened to them, what happened to their people, our community. And, it's a flight response. They don't want to remember it because it's so traumatizing to be in terrible material conditions, be in a family where you have no father, where you're sexually molested and abused, and around drugs and alcohol and other vials of poison and stuff every single day, especially as an African child, back then and today. That's why they only say that they were good times, because they don't want to remember the crack crisis. They don't want to remember the AIDS crisis. They don't want to remember the riots after MLK's assassination. They don't want to remember that. They run from it, because that's the only way that they can find some peace, in quotes, if you can even say that. And the fathers too, we have that big problem too. Like, they just dump their come in somebody and run, because that's what they think that life is. They don't know what life actually is. They just dump their cum in someone and run, because they don't feel like they're human to even live like a human and treat their children with compassion and the word love. I mean, come on. And the domestic violence, that's definitely a very, very big issue, especially with African women. We're still in a Black femicide. It's femicide, really. It's femicide. And all those things come from chattel enslavement. All those things come from colonialism, from imperialism. It psychologically destroys you from the inside out. And, they put these vials of poison in our communities, in these fast food restaurants, and, all these liquor stores, and all these bars, and, all these places, so that we run from it. And this is what we have to really confront in our community, because it's so much trauma that we really need to unpack. Because if we think that we're just going to be on this Black men hate train and thinking that it's going to, do the work to unlearn 400 years of oppression, that ain't happening. Okay?
When it comes to complex PTSD from pervasive, compounded, repeated traumas that are consistently happening, one of the hardest things to do is to actually face those traumas and try to work through them and find a way to cope with them as, you know, something that already happened, and be able to even try to find your way to a position where you're not constantly concerned about that shit that happened before happening again. Because with complex PTSD, it's a cyclical thing. This is why we have the word triggered. That means that something that has been said or done reminds you immediately of what you've already been through, and it's replaying in your fucking head again. You're reliving the experience.
It's a replay.
Happens with working on healing as well, to even address these things and face them, come to terms with them. You're having to relive them over and fucking over and over again to try to work through them. And it's a process of both re-breaking yourself and re-traumatizing yourself to be able to put the pieces back together in the right fucking order and even try to heal those things.
To get back on the right track.
Yeah. Comrade Andy, I see you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is really hard to hear all this stuff, you know, because but that we know it goes on is irrefutable, that we actually live in a hellish world. It's the people at the bottom of this society always have had the worst situation imaginable, you know, and that like in Chicago, we go to the Healing Corner or these other places, and sometimes the blood's still on the ground where a young mother or a kid got shot, and people gather to talk, or, you know, to try and console each other, console the family. Why this happened? The endless why. And it's like my position in terms of hating capitalism is comes from this. It comes from the absolutely unnecessary suffering that human beings and the planet is going through. The whole planet is crying out now from this violence. It's demonic. It is awful.
Yeah.
I don't know. The only good thing that comes out of it is you hate your enemy. You hate your enemy. You recognize them. You don't have to go back to talk to them. You don't have to go back to try to get them to apologize. Like Chase said, you know, screw them. You know, they're dead to me. And you know, I've seen it. I've been blessed that I haven't had a lot of personal experience with it, but my people close to me, people in my family have. And so I'm like going, let this convince us thoroughly that we have to overthrow this system, that this system is anti-life, and has been since its inception. You know, I don't know what else to say. The evidence is overwhelming, and the Gaza is an expression of this today as well.
Yep.
Accurate.
Exactly.
Comrade Andy, can you moderate for a moment? I gotta go refill my water.
I don't know if I can. I'm not too good. What do I do?
I can
Just
help you.
engaging the discussion and calling on people as they raise their hands.
Okay,
I'll be
I
back
see
in like
what I
2
can
minutes.
Yeah. Nothing too bad.
Exactly. You
Nothing
got
too
this,
bad.
Andy. You got this, Andy. Don't worry. But
Okay.
yeah, exactly as you were saying, Andy. Exactly as you were saying, because under capitalism, everyone is traumatized. Everyone is being abused. We're all being treated like garbage. And this right here, what this book is talking about, it's really important because for the longest times, communist movements, different liberation fronts, different revolutionary organizations like the original Black Panther Party and the original Rainbow Coalition, a lot of them didn't really understand just how important mental health played in their lives. They didn't understand that
it was not.
that
It was
exactly.
It was
They didn't.
It was
They
not
didn't
the friend.
understand. Exactly. They didn't understand that they needed a break. That they couldn't just keep on doing. That they couldn't just keep on doing. Organizing 24/7 without a single break, without time to recharge and just decompress. Like no,
Collective.
like we're human beings. We have a battery. We need time to heal and to just be, and time to just relax.
And
The whole
reset.
point, exactly. The whole point of fighting for socialism is to build a new society that treats us as what we are, human beings, not machines, not tools, not something that can just be discarded and replaced as if we're nothing. Human beings who have the right to live a good, meaningful, and decent life with dignity and respect and love and being treated like living fucking creatures. And capitalism denies that. It fucking denies that. And something about this right here is that due to that lack of not acknowledging mental health into the picture, not only does it lead to you slowly destroying yourself, but it also leads to you ignoring ableism. It leads to you not even understanding how ableism plays a role in capitalism, because mental health issues are caused because of capitalism. They are caused because of it. It constantly traumatizes and abuses us, and once we're no longer useful, we're discarded. And those
We have
who
to survive
are
means.
exactly, and those who are neuroexpansive and physically impaired, they're discarded automatically because they're seen as nothing. They're seen as trash. So acknowledging mental health and acknowledging and combating ableism, as well as one of the contradictions of capitalism, it will enable us to not only reach out further to the masses, but it also lead us to unlearn more bourgeois thought and build a new society. Because once again, we have to combat all the contradictions of capitalism, all of them: racism, misogyny, ableism, queerphobia, fatphobia, all of it. Because if what is left to fester, if what is left to grow into the minds of the masses, then the movement will become compromised, and capitalism will be restored back on the main road. So yeah,
it's poisoning us. It's poisoning us, and we poisoning us. We like the gun violence that we face every single day. To see a shot and surround around the blood, and console and move on, and then it happens again. The same thing happens. Move on. The same thing. Same thing. We move on. Same thing. We move on. We're running. We keep running, and we're so freaking brainwashed that it's lost complete control. And it's got to the point, like, why did it have to get here? Why did it have to get here? Why? Because we're so freaking brainwashed that we don't know what the hell's going on? Or because we do know, we just don't want to confront it because it's an inconvenience to my life. It's killing us. It is killing us. What's going on in Palestine? It's right there in front of you. It's in front of you. Who the real enemy is. The real enemy that you keep putting your chances into. And you know they're not going to deliver. You know that no matter how many times you ask them to apologize, no matter how many concessions we fight for, they will still massacre us. They'll still kill off entire families off. And that's what they're doing right now. It needs to end. It needs to end because it's poisoning us. We're on freaking autopilot. We're on freaking autopilot and we don't know what the hell's going on. And we just keep believing whatever our oppressor puts out for white. And this is what's been going on in the African community here. That trauma from chattel enslavement, the femicide, the sexual violence, the adultification of African children, the being abandoned by our fathers, not being loved, not being cherished, having to scrub your skin all the freaking time to rub the black off. It's psychological. And it didn't come from anywhere else. It didn't come from anywhere else. They aid in it because capitalism aids in that trauma in the form of skin bleaching creams, in the form of bars, in the form of liquor stores. Skin bleaching creams that
and blames people for becoming alcoholics or addicted to drugs to try to fucking cope with the perpetual existential crisis of living under capitalism and its exploitation and all of its fucked psychological facets like this.
It's psychological. And if we don't confront it, we will continue dying. If we don't confront it, more people will die and you will die. I don't care how loyal you are to the system. I don't care how much faith you have in the system. They will kill you the next day and will not say a damn thing about it. Because the fact of the matter is, these people have brainwashed us and traumatized our people for so long that we think that it's normal. And it's time for us to stop thinking that it's not and actually start working towards getting back on the right track, getting our nature back on the right track, our minds, our spirit, our bodies back on the right track, because it's killing us. And we know it.
Sadly, yes. Comrade Andy, I saw you'd had your hand up a moment ago. You got some thoughts to add here?
Well, I don't have too much to say other than what's been said. I did think that there was an incident today in Chicago area where this young Palestinian boy was attacked by a landlord. Get this landlord attacked this boy. I think he was like 10, 11 years old. Stabbed him 26 times and then stabbed his mother 12 times. And this is like, and then Joe Biden has the nerve to come on the goddamn media and say what a tragedy this is. While he's preparing to bomb hundreds of children into oblivion. I mean, this is so fucked up. If I have got zero patience left for anybody who can twist their minds into justifying this genocide that's going on both home and abroad, because I believe that it's very, and I've said it before, but this, if you don't see Gaza in the context of that's what's coming for you, then you really are blind.
Right. And mind you, that boy is 6 years old. That boy was 6 years old.
Jesus Christ.
Six.
Jesus Christ.
Here. It happened here. And we still want to keep having faith in Biden? We still want to keep having faith in this system? Really? Mind you, that man that killed him, a landlord, unsurprisingly, he was listening to a conservative news radio before he went into their apartment and killed them.
Yeah.
So Like where do we think that this is coming from?
Right.
Because look at what happened back in 2020 when y'all want to blame every Southerner citizen for why they didn't vote hard enough and why the Texans deserve the ice storm that happened to them that literally gave them carbon monoxide poisoning and was literally freezing them to death. And Texas don't even get cold weather like that, don't they? And the fact of the matter is they keep making excuses. And now look, now you have blood on your hands. Right in front of you. So you should be very, very happy. Be very, very happy. Be very, very happy.
Yeah, these fuckers have nothing to be proud of when it comes to their shit in those types of responses to situations like this. It's fucked. As an innocent child, and at least at the last update that I saw, like the child had died. His mom was still in critical care.
Yeah.
I don't know if she still is, or if she has started to recover, or if she has passed. I don't know. I haven't gotten a chance to check any updates on it. But that whole entire situation is fucked. Like, what is wrong with him thinking that that's
propaganda
to go fucking kill a child and try to kill his mom?
Talk sweet. They talk real sweet. When you talk sweet enough, they'll buy into it. That is what they're doing. The beheading bullshit that was already proven to be untrue by a settler.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do. They play mind games with us. They play mind games with us. They call for genocide, and then when one person whose people are being genocided as we speak gets killed, they want to say, "Oh, I'm so horrified. I am so sad."
Pandering ass bullshit, which is just par for the course for Democrats to pander.
And that's what it is.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Comrade Shay, I saw you pop your hand up a second ago. What's up, comrade?
Yeah. This morning, after I came out the hospital, I went to school to pick up my my little granddaughter, and she was telling me about Christopher Columbus. I said, "Who told you about Christopher Columbus?" And she said, "My teacher." I said, "Well, let's go back and talk to your teacher." So I went back, man, and I said, "You teaching my granddaughter lies?" And she said, "What you talking about?" I said, "You talking about, like Christopher Columbus was the discoverer of America. And he wasn't discovered, he discovered nothing. He was a criminal, And she said, "Well, I don't want to hear what you got to say." I said, "Yeah, you don't want to hear what I got to say, but yet you want to tell your bullshit to my granddaughter, huh?" She said, "Well, listen, sir, you gotta remove yourself from class." I said, "Yeah, okay. I prefer to remove myself, because if not, me and you're gonna have a real talk. Eventually, we will have a talk." And I left. But just to say, just imagine, just imagine, man, how many, and even people here, my granddaughter, my baby's granddaughter, I came back, I spoke to her, and she said, "Yeah, Christopher Columbus discovered America." I said, "You believe that shit too, huh?" I said, "What the hell is happening, man? Don't you know that these are lies that they're telling you? Don't you know that this man killed millions and millions of Native Americans?" And she said, "Well, I don't care what you say. The teacher said it, and I'm going to go with it." I said, "Yeah, well, I'm true with that."
That's fucking gaslighting right there, that the education system is whitewashing shit like that and trying to tell people to basically hold motherfuckers like him in a high esteem when he was such a genocidal piece of shit that even in his own time, he was dragged the fuck back to Europe in chains for being such a masochist, for mass murdering people, for raping people, for enslaving people. He didn't discover shit. He came and raped and pillaged. He was nothing but a fucking government funded Oh God.
Genocider.
Well, yeah, that too. I'm having a fucking brain fart.
I mean, that's it. I mean, that's it.
I have a whole lot of that.
This is dumb. I hate having a patient. This is part of, trauma fucking up my memory, both physical and psychological.
Yeah, but that's what it is.
Pirate. God damn, there's the word. He was a fucking state-funded pirate. That's yeah. Welcome to my world where sometimes it takes way too long to remember a fucking word. But like it's another one of those situations where this gaslighting that's happening with the education system is part of that compounding trauma. It's re-traumatizing people when they fucking grow up and wake up and realize that they got fucking lied to their entire childhood about the history of this country, and then get re-traumatized by the awakening, the awareness there of like, oh wow, shit was actually quite fucked. This was genocide, not discovery.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Comrade Andy. I see you got your hand up.
I got to defend pirates as a group because they historically they were motley crews of people who used to work for different nations, and then they decided we're going to only work for ourselves. They were actually a primitive form of a rainbow coalition. Like, people don't know, like Blackbeard the pirate, they've heard of him, but they don't know that 60% of his crew were black, and that they don't understand that pirates had enforced a form of equity, so that if the captain got out of hand, they just took him out. I mean, they were bad, and they were hellraisers and all that, but they also represented rebellion against the Royal Navy of England, the Royal Navies of France and Spain. So pirates, if not good guys, they were certainly rebellious and part of a proletariat on the Atlantic, on the waves. There's a lot of studies that are being done, and one particular historian I like, who hates and loathes Columbus, and he hates colonialism, but he talks about the pirates as a form of resistance to colonialism, and they set up their own multinational ways of living all throughout the Caribbean. So a lot of the people that are in the Caribbean today are descended from those pirates.
Wow. That's kind of cool. Thank you for the education there, comrade. I appreciate it.
Okay.
And yeah, there is a difference there. Like, I totally support if they're like going and stealing from the Queen's ships and shit like that, or from massive trade exploiters and things like that. The reason why I referred to Columbus as a pirate is him robbing and raping and pillaging innocent civilizations there. So there is a huge difference between using those kind of tactics against the system itself, which is a good thing, versus using it against innocent people who were just existing, minding their own damn business.
Right on.
And a gentle reminder that the dinos are still here.
Right.
They're still here. So
absolutely. Well, I just looked at the clock, and we're a little over an hour in, and we still got quite a few pages left to read. So if we're ready to move on here, Comrade Rafa, would you like to take your turn and read this section of the book?
Yeah, and I've been listening to everybody and enjoying the conversation. I didn't want to even say anything because so many good things came out of that. Generational trauma. Also, nobody's free of this. No class, no race, nothing. And also capitalism. It's a root of a lot of these problems. I really appreciate everybody's discussion. I'm just, in awe of everything. So thank you, because I think we need to know more. We need to maintain this and keep it out there. Thank you. Yeah, this is called Testimony of the Righteous in honor of Larcenia Floyd, mother of George Floyd, a tribute to the resilience of poor working class women. Act 1. I knew George Floyd's mother, even though I never met her face to face. I never shared a meal with her, nor did I gossip about our neighbors while waiting for the arrival of the monthly welfare check, or being careful not to miss the metro bus we had to clean houses to clean. Standing at the bus stop surrounded by the silence of Latino women going to some of the worst jobs in the city. We never said hello, and we never had the time to say goodbye. No formal introduction, whatever happened, but at the same time, we were tribal sisters with ancient identical tattoos. I like that. We wore the tattoos of poverty, spirit, hard work, generational resilience, laughter, single parents, burritos, gossip, music, flying bullets, black eyed peas, and cornbread, prayers, dreams deferred, and sacred hope. When there was nothing to hope for, coupled with periodic despair, we kept our heads above water, but mostly we existed underwater with small pockets of air slowly keeping us alive. I knew George's mother, but I never met her face to face. She and I were the statistical conclusions of governmental research. We were the charted cycles of the marginalized study in the college and classrooms across America, while members of our families generationally rotated through the American prison system. We were the New Deal, failed by deficient school systems, food deserts, minus food justice, racist redlining, brutalized by traumatized police systems, chronic medical despair, and culturally insensitive gentrification of our communities, not seen as historically worthy. Educated people studied us in Sanitized United Way, board meetings, preparing for their next funding cycle. We were Section 8 mothers, meaning that you might have to be a mom and a dad all at the same time, because too many families with fathers touched by incarceration would never be allowed to live in governmental housing. Section 8 program is to support system for broken families with no intention of those families becoming financially grounded, mentally thriving, nor sustainable enough to envision a positive future. We were expected to heal the sick as well as tame the wild alone. We were experts at surviving and morphing into distorted versions of ourselves, bonded to Section 8 account numbers, housing inspectors, caseworkers, and slumlords. We tried over and over to make things better as we tumbled through welfare systems and poverty programs that could not nourish us as mothers, fragmented and broken by the constant shock of not having. I never knew George's mother, but I will tell you one thing. I knew her pain. I knew her deep disappointment. I knew her feelings of abandonment. We were American women rooted in African ways that would never be remembered. We were grounded by tribal energy of diaspora in places where race and class hypocrisies dance well together, where poverty has always been a generational problem, hand in hand with the mass killings of Black men. The violence of poverty has never been far from the violence of the Black body, or the Black body. Yeah, Black people dying at the hands of prison system, by the hands of white people killing them, by the hands of other people who look just like them. The journey of the Black body has always needed intensive care, waiting patiently, and patriotic foolishness. We were women of color trapped in a romanticized matrix of dreamlike American visions, never meant for melanin women who surrendered to life in marginalized ways. We are the mothers waiting for the next funeral, the next open grave, waiting the next balloon released into blue skies. We were colonized and constantly surrounded by the stress and the fear of whiteness. Each day we bore witness to the systematic manipulation of poor whites rooted in Eurocentric brutality based in distorted stories of indentured servitude and radicalized traumas used to divide, control, and conquer. We notice the deadly residue of white supremacy through the actions of young white people acting out white family system trauma, nightmares in bold and dangerous ways. I never met George's mother, but I do know that we hungered for reparations and a home, waited for those 40 acres of work while done with mule in hand, and a place of safety that we called our own. With intention, we will carry the ancestral heartbeats and the resistance of those who came before us, always resisting and always fighting to reclaim the humanity of a people. Even when shot in the back with cuffed hands, we resisted. We resisted and died while jogging on a sunny day. We resisted by suicide, heart attacks, and nervous breakdowns. We sold cigarettes on street corners until we stopped breathing. We were magical women resisting, hiding under the sun, birthing new people, disappearing, murdered while sleeping, or simply coming from a store eating Skittles. We were often accused of resisting while being suffocated with a knee on our neck, quietly whispering, "I can't breathe," quietly whispering, "You are killing me," while echoing the sacred childlike words of "Mama, Mama." Wow.
Well, that was powerful, wasn't it?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. African women literally together, even though they haven't seen face to face. That bond. That
And this is
bond.
what you were talking about earlier. I appreciate everything you said earlier because this hit home right here to everything you said because it encompassed everything that's happened in just say the last 20 years, maybe less, probably less if you think about it. But still, just like you said it would.
Yeah.
That last part really speaks volumes too, and it reminds me of like when George Floyd was killed and out came all of these moms in protest. Like he wasn't just calling on his mom, he called on all moms.
Oh yeah. He was.
Yeah.
Because those words are too familiar to us when we kill each other and when tools of the bourgeoisie kill us. And it rings true to every African mother out here, every African single mother, especially that is out here. It rings bells, years of violence, of destruction against our people and against them, because even though they're still here physically, they're still undergoing femicide. They're still facing femicide. And George Floyd was like a whole atomic bomb went off, because mind you, this was at the beginning of COVID, and it was just like everything that came before that moment when he was murdered in cold blood. It rang to what was happening to us for a very, very long time. And, is that the dysfunction in our community, that the vision that they have implemented so well, that they fabricated so well to brainwash lumping European American children into literally lynching us, into killing us, into beating us, into tormenting us. Like it's not only does it affect African people, but it affects but it affects others because once again, we don't have power under the system. No matter how many concessions we fight for, we don't have power, and we're still slaves, and we're still killing each other, and we're still being killed by the system, by the tools of the bourgeoisie, even the black officers, because that representation shit is integrationist. It's means of making nice with our oppressor, even though we know that they have always killed us and enforced literal witch hunts on our ancestors when we were in chattel enslavement. So I don't want to hear nothing about us making progress because African single mothers are still under femicide in our community. And Black boys and Black girls and Black gender expansive youth are still being killed in this system. We are discarded every single day. We are cattle. We are suppressed with IEPs and 504 plans and all this bullshit that is actually welfare, warfare against us, especially African neuro expansive children. And this is once again, even though they haven't seen each other face to face, it's that bond that really, really strengthens everything, because this is an all too familiar thing with African people within these borders, and it's crucial to have that bond, at the very least, to have that bond, because it's too familiar to us, and we need it.
That's true.
And I could say that just judging from this poem, I think Hitaji Aziz is not just a poet. I think she's this is a history teacher, and I love this about some poets. They capture those moments and document them and record, just like Johnny Torres has done in some of his poems, where he's documented what's happened with police violence there. This captures a moment in time that if it wasn't for these type of poets, there's these revolutionary poets such as her, this history is not recorded. And so, I know when I hear Chess speak about his experiences, I'm thinking, man, I'm listening to a history book right here. Or when I hear, Andy or somebody that's been there longer than I have, I'm thinking I'm listening to a history book right here. And so I'm hoping that, poets continue doing what they're doing, and that we keep publishing this kind of work, because the next generation, they're going to be on fire as well, and they're going to document their history because they saw the previous generation do it, just like, this person here did it. This is awesome, Johnny. Great job, Johnny.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, you're welcome, y'all.
Comrade Joe, I see you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, it's been some great readings. Sorry, I was traveling, so I was just able to listen in. But I know we record these and we play them on the 2RC book reading YouTube channel. And for those that tune in and listen to that channel, I don't believe Johnny has mentioned how other people that tune in are able to get a copy of this book. So maybe not right now, but right towards the end or whenever, if Johnny could put that down either through writing or in words, so that other people can get a chance to be able to read all these poems that all have so many meanings. And that's all.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, Johnny, if you've got a link where people can order it or whatnot, or however you have it set up for people to contact you to purchase it, text it to me and I'll add it to the description for the video.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll send you something.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I bet.
All right, does anybody else have any commentary about this section before we move on to the next one? No? Okay. Would anybody else like to take a turn reading? If not, I will.
I'm in a kind of a quiet place for a few minutes, so I don't think it'll take that long, but I believe I can read if nobody else wants to go.
Absolutely. Go ahead, comrade.
Okay. The biography of Jose Antonio Reynald. Jose Antonio Reynald is the National Criminal Director and Director of the SW region or Southwest region of Latino Justice, PRLGEF. Previously, he was a senior policy analysis at the Prison Policy Initiative and a national organizer with the Center for Community Change. Jorge was a poet in residence for the Civil Rights Corps and in the 2021 writer in residence at the Texas After Police Project. Jorge spent 27 years in prison for robbery and was released in 2008 and is presently on parole in Texas until 2051. Damn. Jorge presently resides in Austin, Texas. And a picture of Jorge. Looks like a pretty badass dude.
Right.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Iron Thoughts with apologies to Asanta. Imagine one of the creak. Okay, imagine for one moment the creak of wood slipping through the seas, spirit fleeing through the spinning waves as generations tremble beneath the deck, the bolts rusty from the salt and screwed to the wooden spars, and iron sorry, it's kind of hard because it's I didn't put my glasses on. Iron manacles, I believe,
Yeah.
making their music, keeping time to the moans of those abandoned by God and grace alike. Invented 3 centuries before they realized a crown of thorns to the forehead of he who was coming was promised to save the world. Iron inevitably would be used for this. No better use imagined than to be molded into a knife or hammered into a sword or shaped into chains, fitting around necks, tightened around ankles, link to link, captive to captive, slave to slave. Among all metals in the crust of the earth, iron trails only aluminum, that treacherous, softly forgiving, weakening, and woven into the tip of otherwise forgetful whips. Iron flays the skin in remarkable even lines, leaving tiny pieces of itself in the limbs of those it has kissed. Ferrous elements smuggling into their scars. Iron was never meant to be traded for the flesh of those it squeezed. No, the coins clanking onto the planks of commerce were much shinier, glittery. I can't pronounce that word. Glittery in the southern sun as the living were herded onto the trading block iron, formed the rib, or the spatula slipped under their tongues, prying their teeth apart to gauge their worth. And it was iron that was calibrated to weigh the more precious commodities. Copper on the other side is of the scale. Flesh on the other, iron has a Teutonic strength, Iron has an Irish implacability. Iron has a British determination. Iron has a Spanish cruelty. Iron has an American flair. Iron is the cups stacked after the slaves sipped their nation and drudge back to the fields. Bowls, I can't really see it. Bowls of cotton blanketing the horizon. Iron is the post, scrubbed and scoured after the daily stew. Hot and sour sits tightly in their throat. Iron is the blade, or the grumbling hoe, gripping by hands that have no memory of softness. Iron is the axe, hefted and swung with intent to build something they will ever call their own. Iron is the bullet. Iron is the gun. Iron is the cage. At 2,786 degrees Fahrenheit, iron begins to smolder, and that is the fever pitch we must attain if we are to survive centuries of condemnation. At 2,800 degrees, iron liquefies and begins to flame and run, and that in the blaze we must light if we are to arrive at our true emancipation. Imagine for a moment the 2,344,826 humans in American cages nourishing their individual flames. Every iron cage smoldering, boiling, melting down around them, running into rivulets, doubling into tributaries in a mad downward slide into the sea to sizzle and hiss, into the shape of the ships that brought the iron makers here. Imagine a fleet, a flotilla, and an Amanda of iron yanked into the waves by the howling spirits of all those who have been manarched and whipped and caged. Imagine all we have to lose is our chains. Written by Jar. Yeah, wow, that's pretty powerful. And then, Che, I want you to say something about that, being that you one of the Attica brothers and had to
Oh
deal
yeah.
with iron chains and iron bars. And would you like to, highlight on this past reading here?
Yeah. Well, it says what it says, man. That iron is iron, and when you got it around your neck, and you got it around your waist, and you got it around your ankles, you can feel it. You can feel it. And it's painful. And then you got it in your arms as handcuffs. That's painful too, because when they put the handcuffs on you, they tighten up. They have a tendency of tightening it up a little bit, so that your wrist could, it hurts. But in Attica, the iron that I felt was a gun that was put to my head when I was in the cell. And they played Russian roulette all night with me, trying to break me. Really, that's what they were trying to do, break me, but they couldn't. Not me, But iron ain't no joke, I mean, that's all I got to say.
Right on, comrade.
I mean, can you imagine the chain around iron around your neck, and then it's tied around your waist, and then you got your hands in front, and it's tied to you, and everything is connected. Could you
Hey.
imagine how a person feels being in that type of situation? You know, where you can't even move your ankles, you can't move your hands, and you gotta walk. I mean, you gotta walk very slowly, because if not, you could fall. It ain't
Pain,
no joke.
pain.
To dehumanize you.
And
Literally
the
take away
bourgeoisie
your
wants to,
autonomy and mobility.
the bourgeoisie wants to make that clear. They make it crystal clear with that.
And I don't know if what your experience was, Chad, in the East Coast during those times, but here in California, especially today, a lot of those same COs are of color. You know, they're black, they're brown, right? And the class, or the divide that they create amongst us, you know, there's something to be said about that. You dehumanizing your own people, right? And I see that happening a lot right here in California. I do agree with what Shanti said earlier about, you know, progress. A lot of people talk about progress, and man, I don't know if it's gotten worse or if it's still the same, but I know it's still dehumanizing. And that word, whoever said is, you know, you're right on, dehumanizing.
One of the facets that this system counts on to demoralize people, you know. It's fucked. That's the way the entire prison system works, is to treat you like you are less than human, and therefore it's okay in their minds to treat you in the manners that they do, to withhold food, to withhold medicine, to withhold simple things like even toilet paper, to, you know, be constantly ostracizing you, to threaten you. If you even say something they don't like, okay, we'll throw you in isolation.
Right. And mind you, those people are lumpins. So that class dynamic kicks up to really, really, like as high as it could get, because those people are lumpins. So, you know, those class dynamics are very, 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 very strong. Very, very strong. Like they do not care for nobody and no one, regardless if they did something or not. They don't care. They will not treat you like a human. And I mean, that's literally the whole point. I mean, the prison system came from the chattel enslavement of indigenous Africans, my ancestors. So, like, you know, it's literally the same core principles of that system. It's just done in a way where they make it seem like it's more quote unquote humane on the outside, but like it's really not. They just uh push it to fuck in the news and in the media and make it seem like, you know, it's this, you know, a good thing that, you know, it's just a flaw that needs, you know, reforming, all that stuff, reform. But they purposely ignore the fact that it's literally slavery 2.0. In other words, you're still a slave.
Pretty much. I mean, that's literally the purpose of the 13th Amendment. It didn't eradicate slavery, it just reallocated it to the prison system.
Yeah. And I wasn't even taught the 13th Amendment. So like
Comrade Shay, I saw you pop your hand up a second ago.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that prison is a place for dehumanization. They dehumanize you, degrade you. I mean, can you imagine you got to come out your cell and you got to bend and spread your cheeks so that they can look up your butt? Can you imagine that shit? How degrading that is? And if you don't do it, they beat you up. You know, they beat you up. And,
Yeah.
and I'm talking about like 5 or 6 of them. They come in your cell and they do a they do a number on you, man. You know, they did that a few times on me. They came in my cell and did me in, man. Man, you know.
They were violating you.
So I know what torture is, you know. And
Yeah.
prison is not the torture. Prison number, it dehumanizes the person. It degrades them. It takes all their human rights away from them. They have no human rights whatsoever, none.
None. And you're literally
You know,
violating every single day. So
and you are only known by a number. They don't even call you George or Tom or no. They call you by a number, and if you don't remember that number, they kick your ass. That's about mine.
That's
a
another
ni-
fascinating
number.
fact. You're no longer a person, you are a number.
Yeah. A number. Imagine that. A number. Not your name, a number. That's it. And that's all they will treat you as. A number. In other words, cattle.
Similar how the Nazis did to the Jews, where they tattooed their numbers on their arms. I mean, that's some sick shit there.
It's the same thing because once again, I mean, Hitler was heavily influenced by the U.S. Empire anyway. So, like, it's literally a no-brainer that Hitler adopted many of the principles of the U.S. Empire and stealing the swastika from indigenous people and making it into a symbol of genocide to the point where indigenous people that used their swastika had to give up use of it because it's now long associated with Hitler and what he did. To not only Jewish people, but to African people, to gay people, and other oppressed peoples that were around. Like, and even in modern day Namibia against the Herero people. Because Germany's Black Holocaust, which is an amazing book, which I still think that y'all should get, goes into that as well. So, like, once again, it's a no-brainer that he's so influenced by this empire because, I mean, it's literally the same core principles. It's literally the same core principles, and it's not a matter of history necessarily repeating itself because once again, it's always emotion. So, it's a matter of it being reformulated to adapt to the changing times, and just like we're seeing in Palestine is literally the same thing. And the stellar state that is not real got backing from Germany. So, like, I mean, can y'all put 2 and 2 together here?
Yeah, a few thoughts on that. Hitler and Goebbels were very vocal about acknowledging the fact that they got their playbook from the United States, all the way down to the medical experimentation done on the oppressed people that they were, rounding up and putting into these concentration camps. They did that mirroring exactly what the US did here with medical experimentation on Black and Indigenous women.
Oh yeah,
that's where I got that from.
Yep.
And another thought on what you just mentioned, as far as the state of Israel, yeah, a lot of people are unaware that its formation happened because of the US and the UK cutting a deal with Nazis. That literally was the end solution to the Nazis' Jewish question, because they wanted Jews the fuck out of Europe. And that was their solution. The UK was losing control over Palestine, who it had colonized for quite an extensive period of time already. And they were like, well, hey, maybe if we, do this here, let's just shove all these people over there, put them in power to do the oppressing of the Palestinians for us. And not, even just Palestinian Arabs, but Palestinian Jews as well. The Mizrahi were, shoved into slums of, 5 to 6 families crammed into one household right next to the encampments where they shoved the Palestinians. And they began the financial and social oppression of everyone who was not a European descent Jew. And they even started oppressing any of their fellow Ashkenazi who stood up against Zionism when they saw the things that were happening to the people right next to them.
Yeah.
The whole situation was fucked, and it was the Nazis' idea.
It was Nazi ideology. And right there you have the Nakba, which is literally the Palestinian equivalent to the Ma'afa. It was a Holocaust. And they're still in a Holocaust because that was essentially what it was. 75 years of oppression to not be able to go a certain distance on your own land, being in a open air concentration camp. That is why we denounce the existence of this state, because it's the US's come up, if you want to know the truth, because this state literally relies on Nazi ideology and Nazism in order to survive itself. It's a Nazi state. It's a neo-Nazi state. Okay, that is what it is. That is what Israel is. Okay, Israel does not exist, and Palestine has always been here. Palestine belongs to Palestinians only. Okay, it's their land. Like, this is a thing that we have been saying, that the genocide that we're seeing against Palestinians is literally following the Nazi playbook, because that's exactly what Zionism is. Zionism has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with Judaism. It's just settlers that are literally weaponizing their religion, if they even have any Jewish background whatsoever, and literally playing by the Nazi playbook. That's essentially what it is. That's it. There's literally nothing else to salvage about this state, because it's the US's lapdog, it's England's lapdog, and how can you justify a settler state, let alone a settler state built on Nazi ideology? That's why the US empire and England and Germany and so-called Israel have such a connection with each other, because it's literally all in the same ideology. Germany was influenced by the US. The settlers were influenced by the US and England and Germany. It's literally a cycle. And this is the Nakba 2.0 that we're witnessing right now. And we cannot turn away from it. We're not turning away from it anymore, because we have been turning away from our oppression overall for too long. And this is the moment in time that we stop running and actually start struggling. Because what's going to happen is they're literally targeting every Palestinian family that they can, literally wiping out entire bloodlines as we speak. 50 to be exact as of right now. Imagine that, because that is what Nazi ideology is. That is literally what it's built on. There's nothing to even salvage about 75 years of genocide. There's nothing to justify that. And this is the same thing that is happening to African people. It's the same thing that is happening to Chicanos. It's the same thing happening to Boricuas still to this day. And mind you, Africa and Palestine are right next to each other. They're right next to each other. So, like, there are Afro-Palestinians that are still in Palestine. And they have a very, very rich history. They have a very, very rich history that's not even talked about, because, once again, cultural homogenization, like, this is what they rely on. And it's time for us to stop running and start struggling, because, once again, if we keep turning our back, more families will be wiped out. And we have blood on our hands. We have blood on our hands if we keep allowing our oppression here and in the global south to continue. If we think that we are going to continue lying to ourselves in the name of so-called progress and continue to get ear candy from our imperializers, no. Because half of Palestine, half of all Palestinians are children.
Yep.
Just think about that. Just think about that.
Like, what are these children supposed to do to defend themselves?
I mean, they don't even have a military of their own. They don't even have a freaking people's military of their own. If they're so-called beheading children and killing innocent civilians, then why in the hell don't they have? I mean, why is so-called Israel doing all this stuff and Palestine and Palestinians don't even have a stable military of their own? Make that make sense. And that's how you know they don't know what the hell they're talking about, because they listen so hard to the imperializers, to what the media puts out, and not actually listening to the people on the ground that are being kept from food, kept from clothing, kept from reproductive care, because there are still pregnant Palestinian women there, and they're being kept from care. Hospitals being bombed, airports being bombed by the settler state. Okay, like, there's nothing to even justify about that, because if you think that I'm going to justify the extermination of colonized children, then you are sorely, sorely mistaken. Because once again, if they're doing all these things, then I mean, it would not even make sense anyway, because they don't even have a freaking military of their own anyway. So it doesn't even make sense. And the state is killing their own settlers, so-called civilians too. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear any excuses. I don't want to hear the lies. I don't want to hear it, because it's literally, they're literally playing by the playbook. And it's either we actually put our boots on the ground and actually do something to fight in solidarity alongside with the Palestinian people and each other here and across the world, especially in the global south, or we just keep running and we just continue to have our planet suffering and have more families exterminated and more land being stolen in the name of so-called democracy. It's our choice. It's our choice.
People need to wake up, because Zionism is nothing but a fascist political ideology. There's nothing Jewish about it. It goes against Judaism. It goes against anything ethical and moral in this fucking world. And it's been co-opted, where these Zionists like to take this stance of, if you confront their actions and their bullshit, then they try to point the finger and go, aha, you're anti-Semitic. I've had people try to tell me that, and I've had to clarify to them, like, excuse me, I'm Sephardim. I am Jewish, motherfucker. And what's really anti-Semitic is that these Zionists are slaughtering the fuck out of Palestinians who are, guess what? Oh, wait, that's right, Semitic. They're just as Semitic as any Jewish bloodline.
Like, please make that make sense to me. If we're being anti-Semitic, then why are Palestinians Semitic as well? Please make that make sense to me. Please make that make sense to me. And mind you, Palestinian Jewish people exist. So it doesn't even make sense what you're even saying. It doesn't even make sense what they're spewing out, because they're just spewing out a bunch of mess that they don't even believe in. Sitting up there looking real stupid and saying all that stuff about, from the river to the sea, all Palestinians should perish, and all this BS that they do. Like, you can tell that they don't even believe it. It's their brainwashed minds, literally telling them that these people are terrorists and stuff. A 5-year-old being a terrorist, really? Right. And they can't even go certain distance on. So please make that make sense to me. Make that make sense to me. Okay.
You can't make sense of the shit we've been seeing the last few days, of like video footage of child after child, infants even, who have been hit by bombing debris, just being rushed into what is crumbling left of their hospitals, rushed into surgery to try to save their lives. People running with dead children in their arms, thinking that there's still some hope for these doctors to save their kids. The medics who are coming in trying to help, being fucking shot and killed.
Like
what the fuck? Those are war crimes. Those are war crimes.
Yeah, those are war crimes, but international law doesn't care about that, because if international law actually worked, then why the hell is the Nakba happening again? Why is it still happening? Why is the Ma'apa still happening? Why is Irish people still being imperialized? Why are Native people still not being given rights to their water? If international law worked, why the hell the Kanaka Maoli can't get their nation back?
Because when it comes down to it, the UN doesn't enforce those things.
Yeah,
And it's another form of fucking pandering. You know, they'll verbally condemn it. They've been verbally condemning the shit happening in Palestine for years, but they're not doing anything about it.
They allow it because that's the whole point. The World Health Organization does not care for us. The United Nations does not care for us. Why do we keep going to these people knowing that they're not going to give a fuck about us? We have to make it happen ourselves. Once again, we have to stop running, because children are being killed as we speak. That's the truth. That is the God honest truth. Y'all can ignore whatever, however you want to ignore it, because it doesn't involve you, and you think that the Palestinian struggle is completely different from your struggle. No, it is not. No, it is not. The African struggle is just as the same as the Palestinian struggle. We both have the same oppressors, and we're still facing the same forms of genocide to this day. Femicide, sexual violence, like educational warfare, all that stuff. So like you can ignore all you want, but that's the truth. And when you ignore genocide, you have more blood on your hands, because that means that you're trying to make nice with your oppressor. Because mind you, I've seen some Taino Boricuas, two of them specifically two that are of Jewish heritage, that are praising Israel and standing alongside by Israel, which I think is absolutely horrid, because not only are they disrespecting their Taino ancestors, they're also disrespecting the ancestors of the Palestinian people, because both Palestinians and Boricuas have the same oppressor. Palestinians are literally being oppressed by the same settler state that is backed by the same oppressors that still have Borican under siege. To be that ignorant against your own history, against your own identity, against your own people. How fun is that?
If you'd like to open their eyes, by all means, go on my page and grab the videos that I shared of Orthodox rabbis calling out Zionism for all of its unethical harms, its genocide, the whole fucking 9 yards, and send that their way and let them know, like, wait a minute. There's definitely questionable shit here when there have been Jews standing up against Zionism from the fucking start.
From the start.
And still are today.
And like there's the Black Panthers in so-called on the so-called Israeli side, that
teamed
some
up
of
with
them
Palestinians.
And some of them come from Morocco as well. So like they have
Morocco,
a whole
Yemen, Iran,
all those places. They have a whole history, and thankfully there's actually a book coming out about the entire history of the so-called Israeli Black Panthers, coming out in March. So like I definitely suggest that all y'all look out for that book, because it's a history that needs to be taught. And if we're going to keep being divided and keep being buttered up by these imperialists talking out of their mouths, the same people that we want to keep giving chances to, then we need to look at each other and say, what the hell is going on? What's wrong with us?
Mentioning that book too. I'm putting a note in our Signal chat right now to add that to the list of books for this book club when that comes out, because that's bound to be a very eye-opening read.
Yeah, I'm gonna add the book title to the chat for you guys, so y'all can look out for that. And if there's anyone else that wants to speak on what we've read, and on top of the genocide that is going on, y'all can speak.
Floor's open. Go ahead, Cameron.
I heard, I don't know how true it is, but I heard that in Israel, they got white panthers.
White what?
White panthers.
Yeah, there are Ashkenazi Jews who joined the Panthers as well. Um, you know, it's one of those things. Okay, we should be able to relate to here. Anybody on Turtle Island who is not of indigenous blood is technically settler or descendant of settlers.
Oh,
But
okay.
does that mean that everybody who is descendant of settlers automatically aligns with the fucking system and the harms it's doing? No, not at all. And the same applies there, that there are, children and grandchildren of Ashkenazim who, settled there, who absolutely disagree with Zionism and stand up against it. And the Israel chapter of the Black Panthers, they actually got inspired to start that. The Mizrahi and Sephardi who started that were inspired by seeing a revolutionary leftist communist movement amongst some of the Ashkenazi youth who were standing up against Zionism. And so they formed the Panther chapter, and a lot of the Ashkenazi who had been part of that first movement joined the Panthers as well, and they welcomed Palestinians to the table. It was a class war they started to wage because they were so inspired to see the work being done here by the Panthers and the Second Rainbow Coalition.
Huh.
Yeah. Comrade Joe, I see you got your hand up.
Yes, going back to this last poem reading about the iron and stuff, but I was able to go see that documentary screening of shit. I just forgot the dang name. Reimagining Justice by Matthew Solomon yesterday, and it was quite empowering because now we talk about, we were talking about the iron, where fuck the bars, fuck the police, and or defund the police, but they went in more detail than I could even have imagined. And if anybody hasn't, Matthew Solomon is going, he'll be in Georgia pretty soon. He'll be in Texas. He's going across the nation showing this documentary. It was so inspiring. And I wanted to say too, is like one of the kind of like, they had a whole panel discussion and they were like all abolitionists. And I was like, whoa, man, like this is kind of new to me. So I was like, it was heavy, heavy. And what was more beautiful is that we had a representation of all colors, all races. And we had members of the Black Panthers there, brown berets, and we had some AIM that were in attendance at this. And I shared a picture of it because I was like, whoa, this is what the Rainbow Coalition looks like in person, And I thought it was beautiful. And I know, Comrade Sister Shanti, you said you had watched that before. Do you got any take on that screening? Because that was powerful, and I'm going to try to help them promote it and get it across to a city coming near you soon.
What movie again?
Reimagining Justice.
Reimagining Justice. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
I thought it was you because I talked to so many people in a day. I thought it was you that said that you had seen it like 5 times. So it might have been somebody else.
I'm planning on seeing it if the link is still good and stuff.
Yeah. Of course, it's not. He's working on it. Like in the next few months, he'll be able to get it out to the public. But that's such isn't the case at the moment.
Okay.
But I think that should be brought into a lot of our communities, and that education right there should be brought into, especially revolutionary movers and shakers. Definitely, if you get a chance, His name is Matthew Solomon, and you can find him on YouTube, and I believe Instagram
Okay.
also. And oh man, it was just so powerful, and it was nice to meet Bunchy Carter and a couple other comrades there. I was like, oh man, that was so cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Licentia was on her way, but she got in a bad accident and ended up having to go to the hospital on the way to the screening. So I didn't
Oh,
get to meet her in person. That sucked. But I seen her on Facebook earlier today. Of course, I've been at work all day, so I haven't touched bases with her. I will as soon as we get finished with this book reading
God.
discussion. But man, so look out for that. Pay attention to it, and see how we can get it out to all our communities, because it's really empowering when we're seeing fighting the chains, fighting the school to prison pipeline, fighting the corrupt police, which is the whole judicial system is just a business,
Yeah.
and how they target uh, brown, black, red, and even poor white. So when we're talking about that, let's not be uninclusive of our white comrades, because certain of them have dealt with a lot of racism and oppression that us of color have gone through.
Yeah.
And that's why I even brought up like High Thurman, the Revolutionary Hillbillies and
Just
stuff.
look at Hillbilly Heaven. Just look at Hillbilly Heaven.
Yeah,
You know.
right.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I don't know about Hillbilly Heaven. I only know about the Revolutionary Hillbillies.
Okay, so essentially Hillbilly Heaven is the uptown neighborhood in Chicago. It's on the north side heading towards the lake, and I think it's next to Lakeview. It's right next, I think it's right next to Lakeview. And back then, uptown, especially in the 50s and 60s, a lot of Scottish and Irish young Appalachian
Yes.
people started migrating up to specifically around that neighborhood. That's where they really were back in that time, and they were, under Mayor Daley Sr., who's part of the Irish bourgeoisie. He was literally committing the same things as the Africans when we came up to Chicago. Like, they were segregated, they were being targeted by the police, they were in the same slum conditions as lumpen African people, and they were targeted by the Chicago police daily, just like the Chicanos and Boricuas and Africans up here. They were being treated the exact same way. So like it's like, and also like Irish people have not been considered white until they assimilated to be white, and there's a lot of nuance with that history that a lot of people don't know. So having an Irish bourgeois mayor literally commit the same actions against his own people, that class dynamic, because he came from Chicago and these people came from largely the Appalachian Mountains, largely the South, really. So, that double class dynamic is very, very apparent here. And, we were all being treated the exact same way. It was just different people, but it was the exact same system and done the exact same way. And that's where the Young Patriots really came about, because the Appalachian people were tired of it. They were tired of being discarded and treated like cattle, just like us. But even though it was heavily segregated, everyone, almost every single group that's in Chicago still to this day, they recognize that stuff shit needs to change. And it was still being segregated. But when the Rainbow Coalition was formed, it was nothing like they ever seen. Obviously, to see the people in the most segregated city, and still to this day, the most segregated city, be able to band together to fight against capitalist imperialism. Really, young people, young Appalachian people, young African people, young Boricua people. I mean, that was essentially what happened. And with Hillbilly Heaven, there were not only Appalachian folks up there, it was also Boricuas and New Africans and Chicanos and other native people and Asians as well. It was a lumpen melting pot, really, until gentrification destroyed the neighborhood and all that stuff. But those people are still here. And speaking of Uptown, there's actually a whole book on the whole history of community work in Uptown for, I think, going back 50 years, around the time the original Young Patriots disbanded. So the history is still in motion. Uptown is still here. A lot of those people are still up here, and High Thurman is still here with us, alive and doing the Northern Alabama School for Organizers, and still standing in solidarity with the new Rainbow Comrades up here, with the new Air Young Lords especially, and that's essentially the history of Hillbilly Heaven, because the Boricuas are a mountain people, since there are mountains in Borican, and the Irish Appalachian people came from the mountains. So it was that very unified mountain bumping solidarity that no one else had really seen back then, let alone in Chicago. So that's essentially Hillbilly Heaven.
They really hadn't seen it in a few hundred years. The formation of the first Rainbow Coalition was things actually coming full circle. During the settler days, and when slavery was first being ramped up here, there was actually a lot of incredibly poor whites who their labor was being exploited in similar manners. It was indentured servitude, not full-blown slavery, but they had enough class consciousness to understand that their plight was the same as the Black slaves next to them, the indigenous people being robbed, raped, and pillaged next to them, and there was unity, a class unity amongst all of these people who were being shit on by the bourgeoisie. And that right there is exactly why the government started instilling systemic racism, because they went, oh, fuck, we can't have poor whites uniting with brown, red, and black people, because they'll fucking overthrow us with that much manpower. And so they started the psychological warfare, the psyop of telling people, well, having white skin makes you better. So how about we make you slave masters? Come work on the plantation, like that,
in America.
Them.
Yeah.
And so they weren't anticipating it coming full circle, and everybody reuniting on a class basis once again, and it slapped them upside their fucking heads to get that realization in the 60s. And that's why it pissed them off so bad, and they came hitting so fucking hard at everybody who is participating in this activism, because they went, oh shit. This is why they killed MLK too, because his Poor People's Campaign was uniting people across racial lines at the same time as the Rainbow Coalition was uniting people across racial lines. This is why COINTELPRO got fucking ramped up to start infiltrating and causing division, because the system was freaking the fuck out.
That's fascism.
That we outnumber them. Yes, that is fascism in a nutshell.
Like that's literally fascism in a nutshell. Like that's all you need to know.
Yep.
That's all.
Comrade Yesenia, I saw you had your hand up a few minutes ago. Go ahead, you got the mic.
Awesome, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. Glad to be here.
Hey, comrade.
It was such a powerful reading. Just wanted to say that. And hi, Gabby. I thought you were. Did you go to? I thought you went to class.
Oh, I was in class. I unfortunately had to go though. I wasn't here for the entire reading. I don't know what y'all
Oh,
read before, but I imagine it was amazing. I
Well,
imagine
yes.
y'all read.
us,
I imagine. I imagine y'all read some pretty beautiful poems. But anyway, say what you were gonna say, Comrade Yesenia.
Oh, no, yeah. No problem. Um, but welcome back. Glad to have you here. But yes, it was
Hey,
very
hey.
powerful readings. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. You had your hand raised. Say whatever you were gonna say.
And I what really stood out to me was the piece about her trauma. She was speaking about all the abuse she had to go through about her father being her one of her first abusers, um, and how she had to grow up at such a young age, taking on the responsibility of being the adult, being the mother, being the woman, being um, the nurturer for her father and for his friends, and not being a child. And that speaks volumes to a lot of families that are in on reservations or grow up in the ghettos or grow up in poverty. Um, it the alcoholism, the drug abuse. That's what kills us. Especially for us as indigenous peoples, it's a poison. Our bodies react differently. And I'm a recovering alcoholic, so I know that I can't just have one. I can't stop at one. And it used to start off as, oh yeah, it was just fun and everything, and then it led to um, daily binges, daily alcoholism. Still functioning, but that's how I was coping with the stress of everything, um, and trying to figure out how to make it to the next day, um, in this kind of system. Uh, just being considered as a first gen here, but having to relearn all the abuse, or having to learn and connect to the earth and my ancestors and go through the suffering, in order to understand, especially when I was hospitalized, and how so many people that are in positions of power will abuse their power. It doesn't matter what color skin you are. Um, if, como dicen, uno le da la mano, te agarran la pata, you give them your hand and they grab your foot. Um, People tend to abuse it, and what I noticed was I was getting in between staff and other patients, trying to protect the other patients from staff acting out. And my experience working in the treatment facilities, with youth, I'm like, I know that's not protocol, that's not how you act, especially when they have a mental health disability, and you can obviously tell. And it was over juice. And so I had to recover a lot from the trauma there, but it's all a system. Either you end up dead, you end up in prison, you end up hospitalized. So it's all a way to profit off of us medically, profit off of us physically, and for her to come out of all of that, all of her trauma, all of her abuse, and, and say, I forgive him, I forgive myself. Um, I'm going to do better, and she's a healer now. And, being able to take that pain and transform it into uh, medicine for others is magic. And that's the kind of material we need. And it's all just modern day slavery. Um, you still see it in the field, see it in the prisons. It's just exploitation, but put in a pretty package. And it's like, oh, well, it's a lot better than it was 50 years ago. It was a lot better than it was 100 years ago. Um, let's distract you with the new iPhone, or let's distract you with uh, new Gucci, or new, I don't know, who's, I don't know what famous people, what is it? The Kim Kardashians, what's up with them, or whatever. So it's all about distraction. It's all about flash and show and brands and individualism, materialism, to see who, even with people in poverty, it's like who made it out of the ghetto and, has a bag. instead of, hey, like I made it out. What can I do to give back? What can I do to change? What can I do to inspire others to create the world that we need for our survival, not only our survival, just in order to be able to thrive and grow and flourish and actually live a happy life instead of a stressed life. And that's all I have to say.
Right on.
You hit on so many important things there. One that stuck out to me being that if you're not exploitable for capitalism because of your illnesses and disabilities, they'll medically exploit you to make money off of you that fucking way. Which is why I call this shit health business. The word care doesn't belong in there, and it hasn't for a long fucking time. You're not getting health care. You're getting health capitalism. They're making hella money off your ass.
I'm telling you, there's a whole book on this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
health under capitalism does not exist, and care under capitalism does not exist either, because it's just work, and it's not even actual care. It's just work. You know, there's another book. There's a book on that too that just came out a few days ago. I'm gonna put that in the chat for you guys too.
Will you pop it in our Facebook chat so that way we can pull it back up? Because once we exit Zoom tonight, those messages will be gone.
Yeah, I will.
Please and thank you. Comrade Gabby, I see you've got your hand up.
Hey y'all, how are y'all doing?
Doing good.
Right on, right on. Again, sorry that I wasn't able to come back early enough. I really wish I could have. I really wish I could have read all the different poems that y'all went over. I'm sure they were as powerful.
They were
as the first one. But no, yeah, exactly as y'all were talking about. And there is no such thing as health. There is no such thing as health care or health or any real medicine under capitalism. Quote unquote care under capitalism is basically just, we're going to give you just enough to where you're not in immediate pain, so you can go right back to your job. And then once you're back, and then once the pain gets to a point where you can't handle it anymore, you come back. We fix the symptoms, but not the core of what's actually happening, and rinse and repeat. They only want to make us repeating customers. They have to make us go there over and over and over again, because if they actually healed the core problem of what was happening, if they actually made medicines and treatments that actually tackled the diseases that we were facing instead of just the symptoms, we wouldn't go back. We wouldn't go back as much. So they can't.
Right.
They have
you
to
cure something, it's one and done. If you're only treating it though, that's a customer for life.
Exactly. Because those symptoms will just come back again and again and again, as long as the core is still there. It's not healthcare. It's health business. It's health industry. That's all it is. It's just a business. It was never made to actually keep. It was not actually made to actually lengthen the lives of human beings. It was never designed that way. And exactly as you were saying, Sister Zen, especially those who are neuro non-conforming and who are physically impaired, who need treatment and medication just to be able to better manage what they're going through. Capitalism ramps up meds. They ramp up that treatment. They ramp it up so fucking high just to get a watered down version of a herb they can find in nature that grows outside for fucking free. They can literally just pick up. Like, it's fucking disgusting. And I want to touch back on what y'all were saying about appellations, because contrary to popular belief, and as much as people want to fucking demonize appellations, oh my god, they're just a bunch of incest racists and fucking shit like that. Appalachia has a really rich history in being revolutionary and against capitalism. It has a rich history of being against oppression in general. For instance, during the Civil War, the white Appalachians in Appalachia were actually against the Confederacy because the Confederacy saw them as white trash. They saw them as scum, if I remember correctly. So the Appalachians were actually against them, if memory serves me right.
Very much so. And a lot of that is because there is an extremely long history of mixed communities in Appalachia where, like, for example, the Melungeons, who are of Scottish and Irish descent, Indigenous descent, and African descent, because these people all lived together. They wanted to get the fuck away from the bullshit that was going on and all of them being exploited and mistreated, and moved up into these rural mountain areas where they could like live freely and not be fucking oppressed by the bourgeoisie. And again, it was, you know, moments of having solidarity together, understanding that, you know, they're all being oppressed by the same fucking enemy, and coming together, living together for hundreds of years. And so, you know, it's a lot of people from these areas who ended up moving to Chicago, like Shanti was referring to, moving to other parts of the country, and then being demonized for not being racist. And they're like, wait a fucking minute, why would I be racist? Why are you?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And it was only until these groups were assimilated during FDR's New Deal, if I remember correctly, where Irish people, Jewish people were assimilated to being American, and they were given white privilege and accepted among the racial hierarchy as quote unquote white people to try and bolster and embolden white supremacist groups and widen the divide between these people who had solidarity and showed revolutionary unity in times past. And despite the fact that there are a lot of Irish people, the fact that there's a lot of Ashkenazi Jewish people who have assimilated and who uphold white supremacy, there are those who don't. There are those who say, actually, what the fuck? There are those who are against that shit in Appalachia to this very day. Are there issues and are there reactionary sentiments among Appalachia? Yes, of course. Just like there's reactionary sentiments everywhere. We live in the imperial core. There's going to be problems everywhere. Not everyone is going to be perfect and free and exempt of bourgeois thought. That's impossible. But even in Appalachia, you have communities who are against racism, who are against white supremacy, who still stand and hold unity for their fellow African and indigenous people and their roots, and they're treated just as bad as everyone else because they're not racist, because they don't uphold white supremacy. If you're not exploitable, get the fuck out. If you're not exploitable, if you don't uphold white supremacy, you're not quote unquote white enough. That's what it is.
They'll call you a fucking race traitor, which I find absolutely hilarious. It's like, oh, are you
like,
fuck off.
Yeah, that's
they'll call you dirty white. That's what they'll call you.
Dirty white, woke, race baiter. You know, like, you know, that's the dog whistles that you know, fascists use. You know, to gaslight you. It's literally a trick. They know how to be sophisticated, and they know how to throw you off, and, you know, make all these videos, you know, quote unquote exposing you and calling you out, acting like they
Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro.
Ben fucking Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro. Hello.
Hypothetically speaking, let's say.
Such a shithead.
Oh my fucking!
He's
I
a
love
fucking
making
reactionary little shithead.
And
he is.
And demonizing hip hop, saying that it has no rhythm. African people and Caribbean people have a lot of rhythm. Thank you very fucking much. Y'all wanna have the djembe or the drum kit or anything like that every once in a while. So shut up. Shut up.
Like literally, it wasn't like for the longest time, I had no idea that Ben Shapiro was Jewish. I literally thought he was just some random reactionary fuck. I actually had no idea he was Jewish for the longest time.
Yeah, Shapiro is a Jewish last name.
Yeah.
But that said, he's a white supremacist. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, literally an Ashkenazi Jewish person, a Russian Jewish person, and a Lithuanian Jewish person, like literally acting quote unquote white. And that's the dynamic of this. You know, the main call for, you know, trans people eradicated, you know, he's a Sicilian, English, and Irish bourgeoisie. Okay. So like it's in these dynamics, this is why we call them out what their identity actually is. Because I mean that's only one small step, but it makes a lot of leeway when we call them out on who they actually are and how them assimilating and literally calling for genocide is literally killing their own identity, their history,
their culture.
Yeah. They're fucking slaughtering our cousins.
Yup, literally. Like, what the fuck? Like, once again, colonialism, white supremacy, imperialism, it is the death of culture for everyone involved, for the colonizer and the colonized. It uproots whitewashes and tries to completely genocide the culture of the colonized, but for the colonizer, it replaces their culture with hatred, with malice. It makes them, it co-opts their culture to try and justify disgusting and abhorrent shit, demonizing and destroying it slowly but surely. That's what the Nazis did. They co-opted German culture, Asian cultures to try and justify your fucking settler colonial white supremacist bullshit.
And indigenous people over here with the swastika because Hitler took the swastika from them. And a lot of people don't know that, but they don't want you to know that because once again, it's all about, you know, the symbol being, you know, associated with the genocide of 6 million people, even though Hitler stole the swastika from native people here. And mind you, like, once again, with these people that assimilate and think that they are making strides by literally aiding in the death of their own roots, they cannot run from their bloodline. You cannot run from yourself, no matter how hard. You can't run from yourself. You can't hide from yourself.
Nope.
You cannot.
On that note, we are pushing up on 3 hours here.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
This up. But again, another very in-depth discussion with plenty of relatable tangents stemming from today's reading, because you know these are issues that cross all boundaries of, you know, location across the fucking planet and every fucking facet that we deal with in different parts of the world. It's all fucking relatable. Thank you everybody for all of your thoughts, for your participation tonight. Another eye-opening conversation, and I look forward to joining you all tomorrow for another segment of Seize the Time.
Oh yeah.
And all power to the people. All power.
Fucking power.
Also, I just want to say before we leave, Sister Zen, I saw that you texted that book that's gonna come next year, I believe, of deconstructing the Palestinian struggle for liberation and self-determination. And I just want to say, Foreign Language Press already has a book about the Palestinian struggle. It is called, let me see here. I have a PDF of it. Right here. It is called Strategy for the Liberation of Palestine. It also goes over the Palestinian struggle. Specifically, I think it goes over the history of the PFLP, which stands for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is one of the parties among the United Front fighting for the liberation of Palestine. So we could also include that in our book club next year or whenever.
Okay. Yeah, I saw you noted that one in the signal chat too. The next time that we have a meeting for this committee, let's definitely bring those ones up and get a vibe check vote about adding those to the list. And either way, if not in this one, we can bring that book to the table in the UPM book club too.
Especially with what's happening now.
Either way, yep. All right. Well, y'all have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow. All power and Panther love.
All power to the people.